The very basics of programming. Hello world. We've looked at some theory, but now it's time for practice. Today, we'll be looking at writing our first piece of real, runnable code. We'll be starting with no assumed knowledge of Python or programming, but a basic sense and understanding of the logical and algorithmic thinking we may want to use when approaching writing our first piece of code. Only as much as we covered in the very beginning of this course, though. Python is just one of literally thousands of programming languages that are out there, but it's the only one we need to concern ourselves with in this course. It's easy to pick up, easy to understand, and is one of the most widely used languages, especially for things like machine learning and AI. The first thing we want to get to grips with in Python is print, which is what we can use to get our program to write out human-readable messages when we run it. Print is the first function we're going to learn about. We'll learn more about what exactly function means a little later in the course. For now, just understand that they are calls for the program to do something, usually taking one or more arguments. Print is often used so we can see what our program is doing while it's still running, or to give a quick message on what it has done once it's finished. For now, we're just going to have a little bit of a play around with it. In Python, we write them like this. That is, the name of the function we want, followed by, no spaces, opening and closing brackets. It's inside of those brackets that we put our arguments. Remember, print is used to write messages, so our argument is whatever we want that message to be. It's something of a tradition when learning a new language to have your first printed message be hello world. So that's what we're going to do. And that's it. We have our first line of code. We can run this right now. The computer will get to this line. It will see we're calling a function print with the argument hello world. And it already knows what that means, so it does everything it needs to in the background. Of course, it doesn't just need to be hello world, it can be anything I want. I could write my name here, I could write my favorite number, I could write out the entire script to my favorite movie, I could even just leave it completely blank, and whatever it is, the program will take it. Of course, it doesn't just need to be hello world, it can be anything I want. I could write my name here, I could write my favorite number, I could write out the entire script to my favorite film, I could even just leave it blank. And whatever it is, the computer will take it and will write it. Variables. I mentioned I could use print to write out my favorite number, but what if I'm indecisive and I pick a new favorite number tomorrow? And I don't want to go to the effort of rewriting the print statement. This is when we would use variables. It's very easy to define variables in Python. We just give it a name and then define what we want it to be using the equals symbol and some value on the right. Worth noting is that variable names in Python cannot have spaces. If we want more than one word, we usually separate the words using an underscore like we've done here. Now then, we can use this variable anywhere we want to refer back to whatever the value we defined it. It's worth noting that variable names in Python can't have spaces. If we want more than one word, we usually separate the words using an underscore like we've done here. Now we can then use this variable anywhere we want to refer back to the original value we defined. The eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that we didn't use speech marks like we did in our hello world example. We only use speech marks when we're writing strings, human-readable pieces of text. We're going to learn a little bit more about exactly how that works and the differences between strings and numbers when we cover data types in a future section. For now, just keep it in the back of your mind. And remember, plain text, speech marks. Numbers and variable names, no speech marks. Going back to my number, we can now change this anytime we want, and its value changes with it. This is super helpful if we want to reference the same value at multiple points in our code, but only want to have to define it once. That way, if we need to change it, we only need to change its original definition. We can even redefine or update variables, that is, give them new values after we've already defined them. Just remember that Python code is run sequentially line by line. So whenever we reference a variable, it's going to be whatever it was most recently defined as at that point in the code. The only thing we can't do is reference variables that don't exist, or at the very least haven't been defined yet by that line. This will cause an error or an exception. And usually when a program encounters an error, it will just give up and stop working, which, of course, obviously, we want to avoid. Introducing mathematical expressions. Briefly, to lead us on to our next topic, we're going to introduce some mathematical operators we can use in Python. Have a look at this. This works pretty much how you'd expect it to. We've defined my number as 1 plus 1, which we know is 2. And now every time we reference my number, we get the value 2. This doesn't just work for variable definitions, we can use it directly in the print statement. And we can write expressions that reference other variables. Pretty much anywhere we can write a number or a variable, we can also write a mathematical expression. Obviously, we can do a lot more than just basic addition, but that is what we're going to be talking about in our next topic.